Well, I am very socially motivated. I used to resist this. I used to feel like, oh, Sonya, you need to be able to do it on your own. Come on. Now I'm like, this is just how I am. I'm socially motivated. The thing that's going to help me stick to it is either being accountable to another person, or which is why I love having a coach. I believe in it, or actually just sitting with someone else.
This is Rebel Therapist, a podcast for entrepreneurs who are trained as therapists and who want to level up their businesses, make a bigger impact, feel fulfilled, and be very well paid. I'm your host, Annie Schusler. Hey, it's December. I'm really excited to invite you to something I do every single year around this time. It's a free event called Plan Your Spectacular Year. It's a chance to review the past year in your business, celebrate what you did well, forgive yourself for what didn't go well, identify what's most important to you in this next year, and to start mapping it out. It's really easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and the urgent in your business rather than looking at what's really important in your business. And then a whole bunch of months or even a year can go by without choosing what you really want to put your energy towards. So this is a chance to see the big picture and make choices about what you're doing with your time, your energy, and your attention. And it's a chance to make a plan that you really feel aligned with. We're building flexibility, rest, and breaks into this plan. Meaning, after you start implementing this plan, if something goes wrong, because it always will, you don't have to scrap the whole plan. This is the actual process I've used myself in my business for several years. I'm going to walk you through it step by step in real time. So join me on Wednesday, December 13th at 11 a.m. Pacific. Go ahead and grab your spot by going to rebeltherapist.me/plan. And you can get a recording and my exclusive planning worksheet if you register ahead of time. So again, go to rebeltherapist.me/plan to grab your spot at the event, and we'll plan out our 2024 together. Now, I'm doing something I haven't ever done before. I'm actually re-releasing an episode of this podcast as an encore, and it's a really good one. So you want to run a group program. How do you actually create and fill a group program? How do you navigate a full therapy practice at the same time? We're about to go behind the scenes and find out exactly how my guest has done it. Meet Sonya Brewer, a trauma specialist and relationship expert who specializes in creative life and relationship design for overachieving trauma survivors and their partners. She created Badass Boundaries, a 12-week group mentorship program for overachieving trauma survivors. Welcome, Sonya. I'm so excited.
Yay!
I've been looking forward to this for so long. Okay, please kick us off by telling us about Badass Boundaries, your mentoring program, like who it's for, how it works.
Yep. Well, yeah, Badass Boundaries is a group mentorship program for overachieving trauma survivors. And, I designed it because I kept finding myself working with these powerful people who were doing good in the world and making a difference in all kinds of ways. And yet were finding themselves in situations where over and over again, the core work that they needed to do to get to the next level was work around their boundaries, and for so many of us trauma survivors, the boundary trespass that can happen with trauma just can make it really murky, especially if you're the kind of person who, survived that by, achieving and excelling. So I've taught it in lots of different formats. I've taught it live. I've taught it as in-person workshops, and also in like all of my individual and relationship work, boundary work figures, in a large way. And I decided, no, let's do a deep dive. Let's take, 12 weeks and really, just transform. And I really think it's possible to transform one's relationship with their own boundaries and become, yeah, more grounded, more powerful, more clear, and more connected as a result.
Mm. What do you think? Like, what's something that often surprises people about the way that you think about boundaries or the way that you work with boundaries if they're
Yeah,
totally new to your work?
totally. Yeah. Well, one of the big things that happens is, there's a lot in the culture that's like, no means no, and people come in, particularly when they're new to boundary work, sort of thinking of boundaries as, these like real hard lines, like, no, get back, and I actually think of boundaries as points of connection, right? There are boundaries in all of our interactions, even the close connected ones. And so what I want people to understand is that, although you can have hard lines, right? There are places in our lives where we do have to have a really forceful no, you know, much of our boundary practice is about figuring out how to have connected boundaries, right? Connected no's, to be, connected to ourselves and connected to the person or the people that we're speaking to as we're articulating and negotiating those boundaries. And then the other thing I want people to know is that boundaries are fluid, at that meeting place, right? In one moment, you might need to say no, and the next moment, something might shift as you're more connected or more rested, or, and so being in, like relating to boundaries as more of a verb than as a noun, I think can help people, kind of soften and relax. And knowing that it's not about disconnection, can help people be less afraid, to jump into the practice.
Yeah. Okay, I need to do your program for sure.
Yeah.
I'm I'm thinking about like an interaction I have coming up with someone who I really care about and respect, and I get this feeling of, oh, something could go wrong with this, or I could end up feeling like I abandon myself, or I could end up just feeling off at the end of the interaction. And I feel like that's one of those kinds of places where what you're talking about fits so well for me, of like, it really resonates of, okay, maybe I have the no out kind of boundary down, but like those much more subtle and important and like happening every day boundaries.
That's right. Yeah, and also in that situation that you're describing, so much of the work is about staying connected to yourself, right? So that, as something is feeling off, you can check in with yourself and see, is there something that you need to bring into the space between you and the other? And so as you're tuned into like, what's my goal here in this conversation and what's my goal in this relationship, right? My relationship is, if my goal is deeper connection in this relationship, then bringing myself forward, right, when there's vulnerability or tenderness or discomfort is actually a part of that deepening. And I can hold it that way and say what I need to say in a connected way and also invite collaboration, right, when it's important. But that's hard to do if we're not sort of in touch with our own needs and feelings and, even just like the racing of our hearts.
Beautiful. That's so helpful. So, okay, tell us about, you know me, like I really want to geek out on the business side of this. What is the format? Like it's 12 weeks and small group.
Yeah, it's a live group coaching. I ran it last time with 20 people. I could take a few more. And I did offer asynchronous coaching as well, so people could sort of send me a video. And so we had 6 live group coaching calls every other week, so people had time in between to integrate. And then I also offered asynchronous coaching, so people could send me questions directly and or share about boundary quandaries that they were wrestling with, and get sort of laser coaching that way. And the next time I do it, I really want to build out the content a piece as separate from the live coaching calls because I was both teaching and having folks engage in practices and doing the Q&A. And that was a lot to do in a 75-minute call. So I'm going to pull the teaching of the content out. And then the live coaching calls are really going to be focused on the coaching.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And okay, here's my guess. Tell me if you agree with this, is that like, this is a really good order to do that in, like where you got to do it all live.
Yeah.
And then now you kind of would know what and how
Yep.
to like create that
Exactly.
content.
Yeah. And also because I have some of the content already built out as a result, so I'm transcribing those things and creating, new scripts and now I can add all the juicy stuff because I'll have more time in the context of the recordings. So I'm excited because, I'm just a total geek about boundaries and, it's just so good to be able to teach it. It feels really good. Folks get a lot out of it. And the other thing I want to say that's different about the way that I do this work is we really are leaning into the body as a resource, right? It's one thing to have the idea, I need to say no, but then you get there and, your chest is tight and your breathing is shallow. And, we need concrete skills for working with what happens in the body, when we're scared, and also, how to even listen to that. So many of us, particularly if we're trauma survivors, have learned to override and just push past and not listen to what our bodies are telling us. And so this work, as I teach it, is really grounded in your body is a resource and, has information for you and can also support you to move through difficult things.
Do you find that that's a challenging part for people, is to befriend their body in that way, to start tuning in?
Yeah, people are in all different places, right? For some folks, the body can be a really scary place. And, I say, okay, we're gonna do this practice where we're just like, let's feeling, how deep our breath is moving, is it reaching into your belly or is it sort of kind of high in your chest? And for some people, even just that is a lot, and then other people are kind of excited about it. Like, oh yeah, I've been wanting to be more in touch with my body. Give me a concrete path. I'm ready, And so one of the things I like about this work is it really can be broken down into tiny bits so that if you're really just dipping a toe in, you can do that. And then for people who are ready for kind of a more robust deep dive, the tools are there.
I love it. Tell me more about asynchronous coaching for people who've never heard of this.
Yes.
Like, how does that work?
Yeah. Okay. Can I just say, when I first heard of this whole thing of asynchronous coaching, I was like, what is that? And then I found out, you can either, asynchronous means that you're not live, right? So you're not together. So people could leave a video or even send a message and then I respond. But when I first heard about it, I was like, how is that going to work? I don't know. I mean, I like sitting with people. I like being live. I like the live connection. But I experienced it myself and I was like, oh wow, this is really great. And I still, because when I experienced it personally was via video, I I still felt connected, and so I decided to try that in my own program because I do really love connecting with people and it gives me a chance to, in small ways, like get to know who's in the program and what are they struggling with and get to offer some of that targeted coaching, but in a way that's a little bit more manageable in terms of scheduling because I'm not trying to coordinate schedules with people. And it's very rich. Someone leaves me a video. I use Loom and they leave up to a 4-minute video and then I respond. And in the last round of the program, offered up to 3 times a week. Probably in this round, they'll be more like once a week, mostly because people didn't really use it 3 times a week. And it's surprising in that asynchronous format how much information, right? Like even with short videos, how much information can get transmitted in that format. I really like it.
I do too. And like, I like also how it means that somebody can leave that video in the moment when they're experiencing something and know what their question is or what they want help with,
Yes.
instead of like maybe it won't be as present in the moment when there's a live call.
Yeah. Yeah, and also it just makes it possible for me to touch more people with this. I love teaching in the group because that's also a way to reach more people. But there's just something very sweet about those one-to-one connections. And I like that I get to have that in this work without having to take on a lot more therapy clients because I can't do that. But, I can have this little bit of contact that deepens and enriches the work in a way that's really manageable.
Yeah. For people who are like, okay, I need to sign up, but where can they? I'll have it in the show notes. I'll mention it at the end, but where can people jump over now and take a look?
Yeah, becomingunstoppable.net. And it's still, right now, it still says waiting list, but I will open the registration in a few weeks.
Beautiful. Okay. And this is going live in November. So whatever is going on, just get on that wait list or, stay connected to
Yes!
Sonya.
Stay connected!
Stay connected to Sonya. So how do people usually find you who end up in the program?
Yeah, I was trying to figure out how all those people found me. It's a whole bunch I have a lot of word of mouth network. I think was a big draw. And, I'm on Instagram. I just started this year putting stuff on Instagram. So that's a whole new thing at Sonya Brewer Somatics. And then I have a newsletter that people have subscribed to. So I think a lot of people came out of my existing networks.
Did you warm that up? Like, did you ask people to share it and kind of update people on what
I
you're
did.
up
I
to?
told everybody. I mean, everybody. I announced it. I told my friends. I told my family, hey, who you got?
Good. Don't you
Yeah.
feel like that's a missing piece sometimes for people? Is like
Yes.
they have this amazing program and they're like, I don't want to bother anybody.
Absolutely. Well, also because for therapists in particular, there's the culture of separation, right? Like, we don't talk to, we're not trying to get our friends and family in our therapy businesses, but, and so there can be that wall. But I actually found in the context of this group coaching context that friends and families were the best referral sources. Some of the folks that got referred by my closest people were just like, it was like if I had, had like a ideal client avatar and I had just like, shared that with everyone. Like folks just knew who to send. And it just was really good. So, in that way, the boundaries are different from, the therapy boundaries and you really can talk it up. And I think it's good practice, to talk about your work and to let the people in your lives know what you're doing and, to invite people to support you. I think we could all use that kind of holding and support.
Yes, please. Oh, that's so good. Okay. And I know that you did some free workshops.
Yeah, I did. I offered a couple of rounds. I'm actually going to offer it again this fall of a workshop called 3 Essential Strategies for Badass Boundaries with Difficult People because I get a lot of questions about how to handle folks who don't respect boundaries even when you set them, or folks who are like, narcissistic or, just that are just going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And so I teach this 75-minute workshop that was very popular and very useful for folks as a webinar.
And so you've done that. You're going to do that again. How, like some people are so afraid of webinars. What was it like for you?
I mean, I really loved it. The thing that I think is important if you're going to teach a live webinar is just to really engage the audience, make use of the connection with the people. Don't get on there and just like lecture, for 60 minutes and, not make room for questions and not engage the chat. And I know that the technology of engaging people via video, groups via video, is still, for some of us, it's still kind of new. We're getting used to it, multiple screens, and how do I stay connected? How do I stay connected to the group and then also do my presentation and toggle between all the things? So it's worth practicing, but the more engaged you can be with the audience, the more effective. And, I like, sometimes I'll get on somebody else's video training and they want to turn off the chat and all of that. But I like people to be able to talk with each other, affirm each other. People are like hearing, oh my God, that happened to me, or, oh, like, oh, I feel called out, and then other people chime in. And that's part of what's exciting about being in that setting. So the more you can facilitate that, the better.
That's so helpful. I just did a webinar this week where the people who were there were so helpful. And I'm so glad that I had been engaging them, because here's what happened. My sound went out in the middle for a full 5 minutes.
What?
So I'm standing there waving my arms, showing slides. No sound is coming out. And then finally I saw, because I was just looking at my slides at the moment.
Right.
Then finally I saw all these messages saying like, we can't hear you. We haven't been able to hear you.
Oh my God.
And then these generous people, then 5 minutes in, I figure it out. I get my sound back on, and their responses were all, yay, you're back, hearts. And oh my gosh, it works out. Even if the tech does go bad, yeah, it can work out if you're connected to people.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. You also did a collaboration with Liz Dubé.
Yeah.
Sex therapist.
Yay, Liz.
Yeah. So how did that go? And like, how did you make that happen? And what was its impact? I realized that's 3 questions. I just got excited.
It's okay. Yeah. So yeah, Liz and I were in your mastermind together, and we just felt like our work is so complementary. She's doing sex therapy with folks who are trying to reclaim desire in their lives. And, and I'm working with boundaries, and that is often such a deep piece of work for folks who are really wanting to get in touch with sexual desire. So we decided we would get together and just have a conversation, and it was, first of all, Liz is hilarious. She is such a hoot. So yeah, we had this conversation, and then we each shared it with our own list, and you just promoted each other's programs to our list. And it was great. It was fun. I learned a lot, and I probably, we'll probably do more, because there's just, we sort of unearthed a number of conversations that we wanted to be able to have with each other. And I think, more is coming.
And did you both end up building your lists with that? Did you notice?
Yeah, I didn't end up getting a ton more list signups. However, I got a lot of people in my existing list who engaged the content. Like, they watched the video, they sent me like, oh, I loved this video, or thanks so much for sharing. And then I don't know how it went for Liz, so that's a follow-up question I'd like to ask. But I did feel like, even though it didn't serve to build my list, having the content was useful, and it continues because it's still there.
I know. I just watched it.
Yeah,
and I loved it.
Yeah, so I really appreciated that.
Yeah, and it sounds also like it helped with nurturing the audience you already have.
Exactly,
which is like at least as important.
Yeah. Yeah, it also, just in general, that experience helped me to see that, because I'm always like, God, more content. Why do I have to produce content? But that was so fun. I just really got, like, I want to work on video, and I want to do more interviews with people and collaborations. That is an easy way to get more, for me, to get more content going. So.
Yeah. And I always feel like that's like some of the best content. So you do discovery calls with people, and you've really helped me come around to what a great idea that is, because the way that some people do discovery calls or sales calls or anything like that can be kind of toxic or weird or icky. But the way that you think about them and do them is just Beautiful. So how do you do them? How do you think about them? And how do you know like when someone might be a good fit for a discovery call?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is, part of the reason I do discovery calls is because the higher the touch, the higher the conversion rate, And so, of course, anything that you're doing to nurture your audience is relationship building, even just writing those Instagram posts. But the more someone gets to be in the room with you, in the virtual room with you, in this case, the more likely it is that they're going to feel the benefit of working with you. So I see discovery calls as a way to nurture relationships, whether they buy from me now or later, or they don't buy from me, but now they know about me and they tell someone else, like all of that makes a difference. And it starts with I actually see a discovery call as an act of service, right? I am connecting with a person. I am wanting to know what's moving them to reach out about whatever the service is. And then in that, small amount of time together, I'm trying to offer some value and connect and build with that person. And that is meaningful. I don't believe in the hard sell. I do believe in asking for the sale. I'm not saying, you know, you do have to ask, closed mouth doesn't get fed. But I'm not disappointed or, trying to like go in or convince them to mortgage their house, or whatever these people are doing on that. It's like,
Yeah.
I trust people. If they say no or they say they can't afford it, I honor that. But I do think that it is the most, at least it has been for me, the most effective. And then, for the online group coaching program, I'm not doing a ton of high level screening. I'm not like going in and interviewing them like, a college application or anything, but I am just evaluating for, how do they do with groups and, what, is there any active mental health stuff going on that might make it difficult for them to participate. But for the most part, the way the group is structured leaves a lot of room for a lot of different kinds of people, to benefit with, and it's pretty contained the way the group work happens. So there's a lot of flexibility for who can be in the program.
It's so interesting because, like, as a group facilitator, as a group mentor, like, you have to figure out, there's so much figuring out of boundaries in that role of like, what are my boundaries going to be with this program? What are my boundaries going to be with the participants? I feel like it must be really interesting to run a program about boundaries and be navigating boundaries.
Yes,
Are there ever times where
totally.
you end up like talking about that in the program?
I haven't talked about it yet, but I definitely felt it in a real way, particularly in this last run as I was navigating, trying to get my content and the live somatic practice in the group and the coaching. I was like, this is a lot. I have overtaxed myself. Let me figure out, my own time boundaries and my own, just like my internal resources, because I still have a full private practice. And so there was definitely a lot to negotiate about that and sort of figuring out, how to hold my intention of, you know, expanding my reach and offering the service to more people, but not, creating a whole nother, huge job for myself. So I learned a lot about that.
Yeah, yeah.
And I will do better next time.
That totally makes sense.
Yeah.
So you have a full private practice. Holy shit. How? Like what
I know.
what do you have a long-term plan of cutting back your private practice, or how do you kind of navigate that combination of both?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so glad you're asking.
Perfectly, right?
Yeah. Well, I do.
Perfectly like all of us.
I do have a plan of cutting back my private practice. I would like to get there in the next really like 3 years or so to be at about half the level I am now. And right now I'm just sort of full speed ahead with both, which is why I ran into that resource problem last time because I did not reduce at all my practice. So now going into this round, I'm making a small reduction. I have a few openings that have come available that I'm not filling so that I can have, and I'm trying to structure in my work on the program time so that that's actually built into my schedule in advance. And then I know I can count on those hours, which I just didn't do that before. It was sort of catch as catch can. And I mean, that was the biggest learning is that in the same way that I schedule my clients, I really have to schedule my program time, obviously I scheduled the live time, but the work on the program time has to be like really built into my schedule in a clear way.
We'll get right back to this episode. I just wanted to pause for a moment to tell you about my offer for therapists and healers who want to expand beyond private practice and launch their own programs. You get to be in a group of driven and open-hearted folks like yourself, and you'll be launching your own pilot program. This all happens in my 10-week container, Create Your Program. Go to rebeltherapist.me/create to learn more. Okay, let's get back into the episode. That's really hard for me sometimes to stick to, the appointments I have with myself.
Yes.
What do you find works for you to keep at the times you're able to really keep those and honor those? Like what works well for you?
Well, I am very socially motivated. I used to resist this. I used to feel like, oh, Sonya, you need to be able to do it on your own. Come on. Now I'm like, this is just how I am. I'm socially motivated. The thing that's going to help me stick to it is either being accountable to another person which is why I love having a coach. I believe in it, or actually just sitting with someone else. So I do a lot of co-working dates. I have standing co-working dates, like I have a Monday planning day date where, I just know every Monday I'm going to sit down in this group co-working space with other people. And what I work on at that time is planning.
And you're planning out like your week or your business as a whole?
Well, every Monday I do a planning out my week and my work planning. I've been like, what am I working on this week? And what do I need to get done and all of that? But I do also do both monthly and quarterly kind of let's look at the business sessions. And I'm really getting more into systems around, profit planning and thinking about, if I have this revenue goal, what does that look like? If I break it down, even down to the week, what do I need to be doing in order to meet that bigger goal? And it helps to kind of zoom out each month and, how are we doing vis-a-vis that goal? If we're off track, what are things that we can do to get back on track? Like that.
That is so cool. I love also this idea of going with your strengths instead of feeling like it's supposed to look some other way. That's so key. I feel like we can spend our whole lives kind of like waiting to be doing things the way someone said we were supposed to do them.
Yeah, I'm so glad to be done with that because it's so much easier if I just like admit what's true about me. It's like and accept it and even celebrate it. Like it's actually once I let go of the thing about being socially motivated, it's actually kind of cool that I'm that way. So, I've been embracing it more and more and it's just a load off to not be trying to like meet somebody else's standard.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm kind of jealous of it too. Like I think that's like, think about how, like you were just saying when you were sharing your program, like that, it sounds like it came relatively naturally to you to call people in and say like, here, this is what I've created. I'm so excited about it. Share it, bring me the right people. And I feel like that's all connected to, that it's also how you get stuff done.
Right. Yeah, it's true. I haven't made that connection, but yeah, it is true. I do.
Yeah. And as the hardcore introvert, I have to like lean into that introverted self and then find the energy for the like social connection. So I'm like, well, I think that's better, but okay.
Yeah, totally. That makes total sense. Yeah, and also it's interesting because I am also an introvert, so I don't really understand myself in this way. But I sort of I don't really understand it, but I really do feel like it's like I work with about half my practice is couples, and most therapists are like, couples work is the hardest work. And I'm like, no, it's not, because they're focused on each other. I'm just a facilitator in that work. Individual work, is like it's a relationship with that person in a way, right? It's a therapeutic relationship, but it's a relationship and it calls on me and my self in a bigger way. But there's something about the two people or more, because I do work with other kinds of family systems that sort of takes me out of it. And I think that my social engagement is a little bit like that. It's like when I'm navigating those relationships, I'm not working as hard as I am in more of the kind of one to one. Like, yeah, would I love to be like writing in my cave, you know, but the effort it takes to build an audience just through writing is just a longer, just takes a longer time. Whereas if I can tap my network, it's faster and it's ultimately for me less energy. So it's a little bit of a weird reversal.
Yeah, and the whole introvert extrovert thing is probably way too binary and oversimplified for what we're really talking about. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I just think the way you think about business is so interesting, and I always learn something new. And this idea of leaning more into relationships and even maybe less into content creation, I do think is the way that we're going to need to be headed.
Yeah. Also because, I mean, I don't know about you, but I feel flooded with content, just what's coming in. And, people talk about when you're, for example, launching, you're going to need to send way more emails than you think you should send. And I really get that. And I understand and I will even do it. But personally, when I receive those emails, every other day during a launch, it is very hard for me to navigate, just like the amount of content that's coming towards me. And so when I'm creating content, I'm just trying to think about that. Like, how do I make it accessible and bite-sized, and also depthful, and maybe not all those things at once. I don't know, but I'm still trying to figure it out because I think the most important thing is the relationship building, and is this content serving that?
Yeah. I really like how you call yourself a mentor more than a coach, even. I see you using the word mentor more. How did you land on that?
Well, because I feel like I didn't like that word coach. I mean, I do sometimes also, I do use the word coach just as a shorthand, but I just feel like it's overused and what does it even mean? But I feel like a mentor. Like that felt more true and more like a way of holding how I show up that it just feels more aligned. And there's something about the mentorship that I don't know, feels ancient to me, feels like, a way of moving together that humans have been doing a long time. And it just feels good.
I love that. Yeah. And you're in that continuum.
Hmm.
What would you say? And you may have already touched on it because we've been talking about how the, the time constraints are so hard. But what has been the hardest part so far about expanding your business beyond private practice?
Yeah, time is the number one thing, I think. There was a little bit of, yeah, so finding the time to actually create and market the mentorship program, is one thing. And then there's something about the identity shift from psychotherapist to mentor and, online course provider and all of that, it's still, a little bit sticky, just, just understanding, because all of my teaching and my online work, it all feels a part of the body of work that I offer. It doesn't feel separate in me, even though they're different services and different mediums of delivery. But because of the way the psychotherapy rules work, I really have to treat them as separate and talk about them in separate ways and make sure in this context I'm doing this thing over here and in this context I'm doing this thing over here. And that has been a little bit just anxiety provoking for me, because I really just want the work to get out there. I just want to be able to help people. And I know that these tools are invaluable and more people need to have them. And I just want to be able to do that without having to worry about, is someone going to perceive this as therapy or something? But I do have to worry about those things. So that's been a little bit hard for me.
I had so much fun getting to hear all of this from you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for inviting me. Really appreciate you, Annie.
You can find out more about Sonya Brewer at becomingunstoppable.net. I want to thank Cosmo Palms for editing this podcast. If you found this episode supportive, please share it with your favorite therapist or healer. That is absolutely how we reach more people. And thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time.